Hello again. It's very bright. Well, we made bright lights for one of the most amazing women that we know here in Vietnam. So welcome, Yen. So happy to have you here.
Thanks very much. It's my honor to be here. And again, congratulations to the AppsFlyer team on your first Mama branded and the biggest event in Vietnam ever. Congratulations.
It is actually true. It's our biggest event in Vietnam ever, and we're so excited about this. But we're going to talk about something even more exciting. You. Who wants to hear about an amazing story? You see, I mean, your background is very fascinating to me. You were an FX trader. You worked in banks, in Citibank. You worked in some of the first e-commerce companies here in Southeast Asia, Zalora, Adoroy, and you even worked in Agoda. So you know how to make money on mobile phones and digital. And today you're at the helm of one of the most fastest growing companies in Southeast Asia, in B Group. Tell us about this story, how you got started and what got you to where you are right now.
I also agree that it's a rather non-traditional story. I spent the last 10 plus years working in specifically consumer apps, like you mentioned some of the names. And I actually came into ride-hailing 2 years ago, and I didn't know anything, right? I didn't know how complex, how intense, and how the operation actually moves, right? So we came in and, for example, I didn't know that in ride-hailing, you have so many variables that can change one single factor, for example, pricing. So if the rain happens, the weather change, one single event in, say, Hoan Kiem Lek could change the density of the supply, driver, and demand around that area, and then change the pricing. Or we talk about map, right? Mapping, 5 meters wrong mapping means a complaint, either from a driver or an user. So the journey has been always about focusing on consumer apps, consumer industry, regardless of the products that we put on the apps. I never, been in game industry, but we do partner with some of the players in the market. And I think one of the key things for me is always focusing on running that platform and owning the technology. So having worked in Agoda or Zalora helps a lot because it helped me to understand how regional or global players actually set up their business and how a Vietnamese local player could, try to be a player that compete head-to-head with them.
Quite fascinating. I mean, consumer being at the center of this experience, right?
Yeah.
And since you are now at you're in the driver's seat at B Group. Talk to us a little bit about, what it's like since you've been coming into the group and what it's like to be in the mobility industry, which is very fast-paced, right? I think people maybe don't even understand mobility quite the way that they should. So talk about that.
Yeah, maybe it would be interesting because, like I said, right, before I came in, it's unclear, because there's not a lot of people working in ride-hailing or mobility to begin with. But it's so fascinating because the amount of data, the amount of technology involved, and we talk about, you and Jane talk about AI and all of that, and think about the intensity. So every problem for us is a minute problem, right? The difference between a client or an user waiting 4 minutes and 5 minutes is a cancel trip, right? People don't have the patience to wait for longer than a few minutes. Or if you add food delivery into the equation, right, that's 3 stakeholders at the same time, right? You have the user, you have the driver, you have the merchants, right? And then you have the safety, incidents problems, accidents, food safety, all of that problems. So I think, like you mentioned, not a lot of people understand how complex it is, and at the same time, how challenging and how interesting that could bring in terms of the data, the technology that we're doing. And you mentioned about the driver's seat, right? So we gone through a lot of progress in the last few years. Coming out of COVID in 21, we started as a ride-hailing company and then slowly adding more services and becoming a super apps today. And internally, this is how we're seeing it, right? So whatever we're doing right now, we're moving people from A to B. And second things, we're moving things, including packages and food and other items. So essentially, how we're seeing internally is we're trying to move the economy around. Today, we're serving a few millions people. The target is to move around about 20 million users in Vietnam. And if you think about major cities, that's a very big part of the population that we're trying to serve. And how do we do that with affordable price, delightful services, and obviously, the more you see inside the operation of ride-hailing, it's actually connected to logistics, to e-commerce, to retail, to transportation, and all of the surrounding ecosystem around that. So that's what we're trying to do, moving the economy.
Moving the economy forward at a fast pace.
At a faster pace.
Yeah, that's great. And you talked a little bit about being in the driver's seat, you also have to innovate, right? I mean, you operate in a competitive marketplace. It's not that you're the only player. But of course, if I relate to our business of AppsFlyer, you really only have one measurement tool at one time, right? But you could probably have 2 or 3 mobility apps, right? How do you innovate to keep the customer actually engaged with B rather than moving between different platforms?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's a user behavior. And particularly in Vietnam, you're not going to change that. People have the behavior to use multiple apps, to compare price, to use different apps for different services. And that's very normal. And internally, we don't actually call it innovation. We think of innovation as doing something right. Whatever is working, and maybe sometimes we do it a bit differently than the market expected us to do. So that's what sometimes is called the new ideas. And I think I don't think we are very. We don't strive for innovation, but we try for results. And I think sometimes in the past 2 years, I could share some things that. Internally, we think we kind of redefine what people think of us or think of the industry, right? For example, the perception is extremely, it's almost impossible to compete in this industry, ride-hailing to begin with, right? As a local player. And we try to prove that we could grow, right? Last 2 years, we grow by 5 times, and probably by the end of this year, we would be on track to grow 8 times compared to 3 years ago. And at the same time, we turn gross profitable, and we very close to EBITDA profitable, right? So what that means is we're trying to prove otherwise. And you asked about innovation, right? And I think 2 things, maybe I could give an example. The marketing part, right? Which is a part that everybody sees.
And you are a marketer at heart, aren't you?
I came from marketing. I'm not an expert anymore. I'm sure there's a lot of experts in the room. So it's close to my heart. But the whole performance in the last 3 years is credited to the team. No idea is mine. It's all the team that came up with how we actually execute and test a lot of things. So obviously people know about B a lot with the viral marketing thing, right? And it obviously earns us a lot of attention. But for us, marketing is actually not the marketing function. Marketing is actually business. We use it as a way to deliver some of the message that we want the user to understand about B. For example, some of the viral marketings that a lot of people see and talk about and compliment is actually how we want to deliver the perception that B is actually a very fun brand, a very friendly brand, a very easy to talk to, very catchy, very safe to talk to, and the cost is actually close to zero. So for us, that's one of the, like you call it, innovation, right? That people can see. but internally, what I think is one of the key factor for us is the problem-solving process. So we have a lot of decisions that at the time looks really risky. So I give 2 examples. So 22, all the competitors increase the price because of the hike in petrol price. I don't know if you guys remember, after COVID, petrol price almost increased about 30 to 50%, and everyone increased the price for ride-hailing. We did the opposite. So we actually keep the price the same and decrease the commission for driver. So it's a very risky move, because what if you lose all the driver, right? Because you increase the price to support the driver income. And then we did the opposite, hoping that we could win the driver and the demand at the same time and compensate. I mean, it works out, but when you make that decision, right, it's very scary. So that's a kind of decision making that we try to be very thoughtful internally, given the limit in, the constraint in cost and resource, unlike, other players. Or recently, competitor has been trying to go down in terms of pricing. And again, we do a move that we move up, and we launch the Car Plus and Buy Plus services, which is a more premium segment. I mean, obviously, there's a reason for that, right? But it only works for us because we go through that problem-solving process, and we use a lot of tracking. Like, and not just AppsFlyer, obviously, but we use a lot of the unofficial inputs, and that's marketing for us, to listen to the markets and signals, exactly, right? Signals, regardless of whatever the channels or the source, because it's easy to, for a mass platform, right? We can't talk to user on a one-to-one basis, so it's very easy to be blindsided, right, by whatever information you're getting. So for us, it's very important to kind of listen to as many as possible and try to collect that signals and, tracking, and understand that whatever move we're trying to do is addressing some particular problem, and hopefully it works out. So we try to create that room for people to actually take risk quite often, right? So we hope that helps with innovations.
Well, giving people the freedom actually to take risk is very liberating, right? Obviously, with risk, there's rewards, right? But I think that if you, as a leader, because you enable that to happen, actually people feel the safety of being able to do it. You strike me as actually a very empathetic leader. And I think this is something that is really needed in this time. Do you have any types of leadership mantras or principles that you apply to your people? I mean, for example, one that you already mentioned is the ability to take risk. Is there any other things that, that you allow people to do and give them that ability to think for themselves?
Thanks for the compliment, but I think I've gone a long way. So I made a lot of mistakes in my...
Don't we all?
In my practice.
Who didn't make a mistake today? I made about 3.
Yeah, so I learned it the hard way, and I think most of the problems that I think the root cause is to do with communication. So you said what I'm trying to do is to give a lot more freedom and take risks. And it's easier said than done, right? Because, as a team, sometimes you don't agree with them. And I have a lot of instances where I don't agree with the ideas, but let them just run with it first, right? So that comes with communications. And I think right now hiring the right qualities. So the team right now, for example, we have a lot of very young, we are born, from 90s to 95, 96, 2000 even. There's very few who is born in the 80s, like ourselves. Only the boss.
I'm a little bit older than 80s.
Yeah,
but,
quite. and they're amazing, and I feel that they need the freedom. So we try to, I have a few things that I keep repeating. One is a 1-3-1 rule.
What's
1-3-1.
1-3-1?
Yeah, 1-3-1 is one is a root cause, the problem. Describe it in a very concise way. 3 is give me 3 options that you think is a solution. And of course, they have to explain what the 3 are and why, right? And then pick one that you want to do, the one that you suggest. And that gives them the freedom to just, but structure. So that's one of the most effective way that works across all level. The second thing is I normally say that it's okay to make mistake, but it's not okay to repeat the mistake. So, and I'm trying to get that through, right? So people feel okay to talk about mistakes, but please don't repeat it. It's not easy, right? Because again, 50% of the problems I met is communication. Sometimes you mean well, but the team is scared, right? Or the team doesn't understand how to, get the solution through. But we're lucky because we still a very lean team. We 300 plus, 400 people across, 15 different products. So you could already feel that it's a lot of moving around, a lot of miscommunications potentially. But we're trying to still keep it lean and trying to emphasize that, just speak up. It's not easy, it's not perfect. But so far it's working for us, I hope.
I think that's great, and giving people that emotional safety is so important, especially in a fast-moving environment, right? Talking about growth, and we have probably many companies out here that are growing both in Vietnam, but also growing internationally. And you've been on the international stage for quite some time, having worked in international companies, Citibank, Agoda, Zalora, but also now working in Vietnamese companies. What would you say is the prospect of Vietnamese companies going global, including yourselves, getting outside of Vietnam? Maybe how do you look at that, and when is the right time for companies to go global? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't dare to talk to people that already have the experience because we're not out yet, right? And we normally don't talk about future plan. But I do have a view, right? I feel the opposite. I feel that right now people are coming to Vietnam, right? More and more. And obviously, I think the main reason is we're benefiting from a very macro reason. As a 100 million population, the age, the internet user, and the stability and all these trade commercials and political positioning that bringing Vietnam closer to everybody else, and people are actually coming excitedly. I had a meeting yesterday, and the same message relayed that every single major business communities in Southeast Asia markets like Thailand, Indo, Singapore, Malay, now everybody talks about Vietnam. I mean, talking doesn't mean they're coming, but we're in a very bright spot. So obviously it doesn't mean you don't go out, but it also means that there's more talent, more investment, more capital, more access, right, for Vietnam to go out.
More opportunity.
Of course, a lot more, and it's very exciting. I think we're lucky to actually be working in this particular decade where Vietnam is gaining more and more attention and maturity. 10 years ago when we started this whole thing, right? I still remember shopping online is considered scam and fraud, right? Nobody shops online. Online means scam, and here we are. Everything is in the millions and in the billions. So I don't have a particular experience on expansion. We do work with international partners. We do have talks to go out, but I wouldn't, have the real experience like some of you guys already have. But I think it's very bright. The level playing field is there. The same, like we see, you asked about mobility, right? Two things we're very proud, even though we compete in Vietnam, is we actually compete head-to-head with a global player. And that's not easy. Any one of you who's a smaller player in the market would know the gap in resource and in talent and in investment is tremendous, right? It's not an unique story, but it's not easy when you are the one who execute it. But as long as we can play and compete head to head, we would always have a chance to go out. And there's nothing unique about Vietnam going out. So very, very bright, I think.
Yeah, I think this is, you make a really good point, right? Because a lot of times companies fail to see that the opportunity is right under their feet and sometimes look much further. And I think that there's always the right time to look for opportunity outside. But Vietnam, I mean, it's such a promising market here. So many bright minds. And when I say bright, there's a lot of youth and energy here. And I think it's helped to really make Vietnam, actually for us as a company, one of the star markets in Asia. So really great job to all of you guys for being innovative and driving growth and not being afraid to fail. I really like that. When it comes to technology, right? What are your thoughts on AI? How is that going to change the way that you guys operate? And it's not only mobility, right? It's beyond just mobility. What are your thoughts on AI and disruptive technology?
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I think AI obviously. So for us, there's 3 layers, right? There's the internal operation, AI support, and that's internal products, AI embedded. And the third layer is obviously you provide some products or solution with AI. So for us, we kind of already done something on the layers 1 and 2. And obviously, personally, I believe that AI is going to change a lot of things, majorly. I mean, the same with every other technology that comes and goes, but AI is so fast, and the speed of change and everything is going to change. And internally at B, we already, so we have a few training for management team to actually understand how it's going to change the future of work, either at B this year or next year or the year after that, to force people to be scared, so scared that they start to using AI as part of their workflow on a daily basis. So that's the first part, right, the internal operation. In terms of our products, you're right. I mean, we have a lot of different, so we have 6 pillars right now. So we have the transportation, right, with car and bike and delivery and food delivery. We have the digital goods. And the last part is the embedded finance, which is already up and running since last year. So in every one of them, we have some elements of AI kind of embedded, like AI ML, the modeling only, not the Gen AI. The Gen AI is more on the operation internally. And we actually trying to make our staff very aware and very scared so that they move their ass and do something about it, because it's really going to change. And on the third part, we're doing something, but it's not out yet, right? So yeah, scare base would be the good word. Hopeful, but scare base, very scary.
Do you? Maybe this is a little bit of a side question.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a day in the future and when there will be driverless or autonomous driving here in Vietnam?
Yeah, I mean it's already on the streets, not here, right? But
in China, maybe.
In China,
yeah,
in SF, I was like the Waymo. When I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago, that's the day that they first officially opened for the public. And the car was just moving around in the street. So it's just a matter of time. And I think beginning of July, Vietnam has a new law to allow the autonomous device, not the vehicle, yeah, the device that moving around. So there's a robot guy that moving around on the streets in Hanoi, actually in the city. Because of that regulation, just open up. I forgot the name, but yeah.
Well,
you don't like it?
Well, actually, I do like it, but there's so many motorcycles on the street here, and just crossing the road is already a challenge. I feel like I'm, that frog game where you're trying to cross the road, and what I see or learn is, and I don't have the strength to do this yet, is just walk, and no one's going to hit you. But you have to have the confidence to actually do it.
Yeah. I mean, it should be our main concern, right? Because today we have a few 100,000 drivers. What if tomorrow there's no driver, right? Because so outside the business results, right, we actually bringing a lot of jobs and side income for a lot of people. So whatever the new technology, like you said, AI or driverless car, then we gotta move and navigate with that. But I think Vietnam is a bit far away because there's still so many motorbikes.
Are there any founders out here? Any founders of companies, CEOs, VPs, people who are aspiring to be successful? Anyone? No. You know, I was going to ask you, and I guess none of them want to hear, but do you have advice for a young, aspiring entrepreneur? Because I think quite a few people, I know my team, they all look up to you. And you're really an example of what people can become. And maybe in Vietnamese, you can speak to the crowd and tell them just some advice about how they can go about their careers and grow, and something inspiring to them about, you know, failing and also succeeding, right?
I have three. And one would be...
Feel free in Vietnamese, by the way. I think they'll enjoy that more. Would you like to hear it in Vietnamese? I can't hear you.
Ok, mình có ba cái chia sẻ thôi, không phải lời khuyên, tại vì nói chung là lời khuyên nghe nó rất là ghê gớm vì cũng không biết là mọi người đang ở stage nào. Thường ấy thì có 3 lời khuyên này mà mọi người sẽ thấy khá là buồn cười. Cái thứ nhất thì nó không có gì ngạc nhiên, nhưng mà có 2 thứ giúp mình rất nhiều trong 10 năm vừa rồi. Thì thứ nhất là lúc nào mình cũng sợ, tức là mình rất là scared nhưng mà mình vẫn move on, tức là tất cả những cái job mà mình đã từng take ấy, nó đều nhìn nó rất là tệ. Ví dụ như là cái job ở Bi lúc mà mình nhận ấy thì nó là giữa lockdown và nó đang rất là khó khăn. Thì mọi người, tất cả những người thân nhất thì đều nói là có bị điên hay không mà lại nhận một cái job trong lúc mà lockdown như này mà lại thuộc về cái ngành đi lại. Thì mình thấy là tất cả những lúc mà mình sợ nhất nhưng mà mình vẫn quyết định ấy, thì đấy là cái the best kind of gut feeling decision. Thì mà nó lặp lại rất nhiều lần. Tức là ý là đừng có cần suy nghĩ quá nhiều, không cần phải planning quá. Miễn là thấy là cái job đấy đúng với cái. Tại vì mình biết chính xác là mình muốn làm cái gì. Mình muốn làm consumer app, mình muốn làm app mà mình có thể control the technology, có room để làm, ví dụ như vậy. Thì đấy là cái thứ nhất. Cái thứ hai mà người sẽ thấy hơi buồn cười, đấy là hãy nhớ có thật là nhiều hobbies bên ngoài công việc. Và hãy nhớ uống nhiều vitamin, chăm sóc sức khỏe. Thì cái đấy là cái mà thường là mọi người rất là ngạc nhiên là tại sao kiểu ý là có thể làm việc nhiều giờ như vậy rồi là không stress vân vân. Thì mình thấy là thường khi mà mình đi làm những việc khác ngoài công việc ấy, thì sẽ rất là có nhiều ý tưởng để những ý tưởng mà liên quan đến kinh doanh hoặc là marketing hoặc là creative ideas thì sẽ thường là do mình dành rất nhiều thời gian làm những việc ở ngoài công việc, đi chơi hay là đi chăm sóc sức khỏe. Và mình là một tín đồ của vitamins và supplements. Và rất nhiều người đã kiểu thôi chết rồi, thế thì cho mình xin cái list để mua vitamin. Thì anyway, đấy là một cái thực sự là thường là chúng ta stress là do chúng ta không có đủ chất trong người. Chúng ta bị burnout, bị làm việc quá sức, bị stress và thực sự là nó không hiệu quả. Nói chung cách đây khoảng 3 năm lúc mà mình bị burnout ở Vin ấy, thì mình thay đổi khá nhiều. Thì mình thấy là nó là 180 độ, tức là nó là 2 con người khác nhau. Thì miễn là chừng nào mình rất là khỏe và rất là mentally rất là strong thì không có vấn đề gì cả, việc gì cũng làm được hết. Thì đấy là cái thứ hai. Cái thứ ba là cái gì nhỉ? Quên bố rồi. Cái thứ hai rất quan trọng nhé. Cái thứ hai thực sự là game changer.
Ladies and gentlemen, Yen Vu, thank you so much.